Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are taking a close look at a truly intense and pivotal scene from Dostoevsky's epic novel, The Brothers Karamazov.
Yeah, it's a big one.
We've been given a stack of material focusing on one specific, really crucial moment, the interrogation of Dmitry Karamazov immediately following, well, a night of total chaos.
That's right. And this isn't just us reading the book. We're using excerpts from, like, notes and transcripts of that actual interrogation within the story.
Yeah.
It's the scene where Dmitri is really put on the spot.
He's facing accusations tied to the murder of his father, Fyodor Pavlovich.
Huh.
And at the absolute heart of it all, for the authorities anyway, is this missing sum of money. 3,000 rubles.
Exactly. That money is the key point they keep hammering on.
So our mission for this deep dive is to get inside this transcript, really unpack it. We want to understand Dmitri's own explanation, which, fair warning, is pretty wild.
Oh, it is. Definitely unconventional.
And we need to dissect the witness testimonies presented against him. We want to figure out what this whole pressure cooker of a scene reveals, not just about the potential crime, but, about the characters involved, the nature of truth when you're under duress, and just the forces driving this whole incredible story.
It's a scene that takes all these simmering tensions, all the family drama and conflict we've seen building, and funnels them right into this single, high-stakes legal and psychological confrontation.
Yeah.
It's where the personal stuff suddenly becomes intensely public and, well, potentially criminal.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The source material kicks off with the interrogation already underway. Dmitri is facing the judges, the lawyers, and they're laser-focused on one thing. The 3,000 rubles.
Right. Where'd he get it? And maybe more importantly, where is it now?
It really seems the entire case against him, at least at this initial stage, hinges on this specific amount of money.
And the transcript notes something interesting right away. Dmitri doesn't just spill the beans. There's an initial resistance, almost a defiance, before he finally agrees to talk about it.
Like he's holding back. Or maybe he just doesn't know what to say.
Could be either. Maybe the pressure just builds until he feels he has to offer some kind of account, however strange it turns out to be.
And the story he tells. Oh, man. It is definitely not what anyone expects. He starts explaining his finances, and then he introduces this method he has for carrying money. He says he had a necklace he often wore.
Yes, a necklace. And he claims he took a piece of cloth. Not just any cloth, mind you. He specifies it was torn from a cleaning cloth he found at his landlord's place.
Wait, a cleaning cloth? He tore a piece off.
Yeah. And then sewed this piece of cloth onto the necklace, basically making a little pouch.
Okay, that's already getting weird. A cleaning rag sewn onto a necklace.
Exactly. He insists he put the original 3,000 rubles he'd acquired inside this makeshift cloth pouch. Then he wrapped the whole thing, necklace, pouch, money, and tied it around his neck, under his clothes. He's careful to clarify that he'd already spent 1,500 rubles of that original amount previously. That spending, he seems to be saying, look, that's accounted for. We all know about that. It's not the issue here.
Right.
The remaining 1,500 rubles, the crucial amount that's missing or unaccounted for in any normal way that, he insists, was kept in this peculiar cloth pouch around his neck.
So his explanation for the specific 1,500 rubles that the authorities are probably zeroing in on, maybe because it vanished the night his father was killed and everyone knew his father had just got 3,000 rubles. His explanation is that it was hidden in a piece of cleaning rag sewn onto a necklace he wore. It's elaborate, isn't it?
It is. Very. And the reaction from the interrogators, as described in the notes we have, it's immediate and completely dismissive. It's not just skepticism, it's outright ridicule.
They don't buy it for a second.
Not even close.
Yeah.
They immediately start questioning his sanity, or maybe just his honesty, straight up asking if he's making sense.
The transcript records them saying things like, what kind of nonsense is this? And is there any logic to this at all?
Yeah, and asking, have you ever heard of a man sewing money into a cloth and tying it around his neck? They flat out call his words childish.
Wow. So the atmosphere shifts. It goes from a formal inquiry to just open mockery, making Dmitri look ridiculous even as, his life hangs in the balance.
It's a brutal psychological tactic, whether they mean it that way or it's just their genuine reaction to how absurd it sounds. They aren't treating his story as maybe a strange truth. No, they see it as an obvious, almost pathetic lie.
Right.
And that immediate visceral disbelief, that tells you a lot about how credibility works when you're under pressure. Doesn't matter how true your story might feel to you. If it defies common sense or experience that completely, most likely to be dismissed out of hand. especially by people looking for a straightforward explanation.
Yeah, they want something neat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet, Dmitri, despite the mockery, he stands his ground. He insists it's the absolute truth. The source notes his argument is basically, just because it's weird doesn't mean I didn't do it that way. He repeats that the first 1,500 is accounted for, and the remaining 1,500 rubles were, in fact, in that cloth pouch. He clings to this specific, very strange detail.
He does. But the interrogators, naturally, they press him on the logical holes in the missing pieces. The most obvious questions are about the physical evidence. They ask, where is this necklace and this cloth now?
And his answer, he just says he threw it away.
He threw it away, okay. Follow-up question, where did you throw it?
And he specifies he threw it away in the city square of the town he had come from, like back where he started his journey.
So the actual physical proof of this incredibly unusual way of carrying money, the piece of cloth sewn onto a necklace containing the very money they're asking about, is just gone.
Yeah.
Discarded in a public square miles away. You can see how, from their perspective, trying to verify his story, that detail just makes it sound even more suspicious.
It's incredibly convenient, isn't it? The only thing that could maybe back him up is just tossed aside. Huge red flag.
Massive. And they go back to the cloth itself, maybe hoping to trip him up or find some inconsistency. Where did you get this cloth?
And he just repeats the story. Tearing a piece off a cleaning cloth at his landlord's place, he sticks to every single detail of this really elaborate, bizarre account.
Wow. He's doubling down.
Totally. And the interrogator's reaction is captured perfectly in the notes. Wow, Mr. Dmitri, they say. But you can just feel the sarcasm, the utter disbelief.
Yeah, it's not a genuine wow.
Not at all. They note his statement down, and they explicitly tell him it will be used against him at his trial. They're documenting his words, sure, but their tone, their questions, their laughter, it all signals they miles away from believing him. They're basically compiling evidence of his perceived lies, not exploring his truth.
And this clear lack of faith, you can tell it gets to Dmitri. The transcript mentions he becomes irritated, frustrated that they just refuse to believe this weird personal truth he's offering them.
So he challenges them.
Yeah, directly. He says something like, go search the square yourselves. You'll find the cloth.
It's almost like a desperate dare, isn't it? A plea for them to just try, just make the effort to check his story, however unlikely it sounds. But you get the sense the wall of disbelief is just too high by then.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's insurmountable. This whole part of the interrogation is just a powerful look at, the burden of proof and how credibility works. Dmitri's story is hard to believe because it's so specific, so unconventional, and the only potential proof is conveniently gone.
It defies common sense.
Completely. Compare it to a more typical explanation, even if it were false, like saying he gambled it away or lost it. That story, while maybe untrue, is at least structurally believable. It fits a pattern.
Right. People gamble money away all the time.
Exactly. But Dmitri's chosen explanation feels like a desperate, poorly constructed lie, precisely because it's so unique and untraceable.
So it leaves you grappling with that classic Dostoevskian question. Is this the complex, messy truth of a man whose life is just genuinely stranger than fiction? Or is it the panicked invention of someone with something truly terrible to hide?
Yeah. And under that kind of pressure, facing accusations of killing your own father.
Yeah.
What does it feel like to offer your truth, however bizarre it is, and just be met with laughter and scorn?
It must be profoundly isolating. The legal danger is huge, obviously, but the psychological weight of being utterly disbelieved by the people holding your fate in their hands, having your own words twisted into proof that you're lying, that adds this unbearable layer to his suffering right there.
It's the loneliness of having a truth that simply nobody finds credible.
Okay, so Dmitri's bizarre defense seems to have landed really poorly.
They put it mildly.
The interrogation then shifts. They move from hearing Dmitri's account to hearing from other people who were around him. And this is where the weight of witness testimony is about to come crashing down.
Exactly. The process moves to calling witnesses who interacted with Dmitri, especially around the time the money disappeared or was being spent. And what you see here is how quickly external perceptions and maybe self-interest can shape the story that gets told to the authorities.
The first witness is Trifon. He's the owner of the guest house where Dmitri threw that wild, expensive party just the night before.
Right. And the source notes Trifon's demeanor right from the start. He appears angry with Dmitri, which is striking because, like you said, Dmitri had just spent a lot of money at his place, brought him a ton of business, yet now there's immediate hostility.
Strange. So what does Trifon testify about the money? Does he back up Dmitri's 1,500 in a pouch story?
Not even slightly. His testimony is a direct hit against Dmitri. He claims Dmitri mentioned having 3,000 rubles that very night during the party. But it gets worse.
How so?
Trifon also says Dmitri told him he had already spent 3,000 rubles a month prior at Trifon's place. So according to Trifon, Dmitri was talking about a total of 6,000 rubles in his presence, around that time 3,000 spent before, 3,000 he had now. And Trifon explicitly calls Dmitri a liar in his testimony regarding the money.
Okay, so Trifon not only contradicts Dimitri's claim of having only 1,500 left from an original 3,000, but he introduces this idea that Dmitri himself was claiming to have handled a total of 6,000 rubles recently. That completely blows Dimitri's story out of the water.
It really escalates the perceived scale of Dimitri's finances in the eyes of the interrogators. Makes the 1,500 in a pouch seem even more ridiculous.
And this is where we see that dramatic shift the source mentions, right? You compare Trifon's angry, accusatory tone now to how he probably was the night before. Come in, Dmitri, we were waiting for you, you know?
Exactly. The world has changed in hours, as the notes say. When Dmitri was the rich guy, the free-spending customer, Trifon was all smiles and welcomes. Now that Dmitri is the accused, facing ruin, Trifon is hostile, maybe trying to distance himself or maybe even painting himself as someone who was suspicious all along.
It really highlights that theme of fair weather friends, doesn't it? And just the harsh reality of self-interest. People who might have benefited from you are suddenly quick to turn when you're in trouble. They align themselves with power or what they think is the winning side.
Absolutely. It's a cold dose of reality. The second witness they call is Andrei, the horseman, the guy who drove Dmitri to the party.
And the source notes that even his attitude has changed, even though Dmitri apparently tipped him really well for the ride.
Yeah, another example of how fast perceptions flip. Andrei describes Dmitri as having a not right mind. Says he was acting somewhat crazy during the journey.
Okay, that's not good for Dimitri's image. Does Andrei say anything about the money?
He does. He confirms Dmitri mentioned having 3,000 rubles while they were on the road. Even offered Andrei more money, apparently.
So he confirms the 3,000 figure for that night. Does Andrei support Trifon's higher number, the 6,000 total?
And this is crucial. Yes, he does. Andrei corroborates Trifon's story about the 6,000. He explicitly states that Dmitri told him on the road that he had spent 3,000 a month ago at Trifon's place and had 3,000 for tonight's party.
So now you have two independent witnesses telling the authorities that Dmitri was talking about dealing with 6,000 rubles around this time, not just the 1,500 left from 3,000.
Exactly. It significantly damages Dmitri's credibility on the money issue. His story of 1,500 in a pouch looks even less likely when multiple people heard him claiming much larger sums.
That must have hit hard.
You'd think so.
Yeah.
And Andrei adds this specific, kind of haunting detail about Dmitri's state of mind on the journey. He mentions Dmitri asking him, Andrei, if he thought he'd go to heaven or hell if he were to die right then.
Wow. That's intense. It doesn't directly prove anything about the money, but it paints this picture of a man in extreme mental turmoil, maybe contemplating death, judgment.
Right. And the authorities could easily interpret that as the behavior of a guilty conscience, couldn't they? Or at least a man in a highly unstable, volatile state around the time of the crime.
It just adds to this growing image of Dmitri being erratic, maybe deceitful, reinforces the idea that his weird financial story is just part of that whole picture.
And like Trifon, Andrei's loyalty, or at least his positive disposition, seems to have just evaporated once Dmitri became the accused. Even the big tip didn't seem to matter anymore.
So two witnesses down, both giving seemingly consistent testimony about the money, at least the larger sums Dmitri talked about, and both damaging his case. Who's the third witness?
The third witness called is the Polish officer. This is Grushenka's former lover, Dmitri's romantic rival. He'd just shown up again recently.
Okay, so this guy definitely has a motive to see Dmitri go down, a huge personal grudge. What does his testimony add, especially about the money?
Well, his account links the money directly to their rivalry over Grushenka. He claims Dmitri approached him and tried to, bargain or make a deal to basically get rid of him.
A deal involving money.
Yes. The officer states that Dmitri offered him 700 rubles immediately and promised another 2,300 later, adding up to exactly 3,000 rubles if he would just take Grushenka and leave for Poland.
Whoa. Okay, this puts a totally different spin on the money, doesn't it? It's not just about spending or hiding it anymore. Now it's potentially a bribe in this intense love triangle.
It gives the authorities a specific, albeit pretty sordid, reason why Dmitry might have needed or been dealing with 3,000 rubles that night. And it directly contradicts Dmitry's story about having only 1,500 left from his earlier stash, hidden away.
Yeah, it fits a more conventional, if unpleasant, human motive jealousy trying to buy off a rival.
Exactly. And the source material points out the officer's hypocrisy here, too. He's apparently known to be a cheat at gambling himself, yet he's accusing Dmitry of trying to make this dishonest bargain.
And the notes mention his demeanor. He seems pleased.
Very. It says he gives an evil smile when the judges are reprimanding Dmitry based on his testimony. It clearly shows his personal animosity, his satisfaction in seeing Dmitry cornered. This isn't just objective testimony, it's loaded with resentment.
So when the judges confront Dmitry with this story, the 3,000 ruble bribe offer, which directly contradicts his 1,500 in a pouch story, how does Dmitry respond? Does he have yet another explanation?
He does. He denies the officer's version, the cash bribe for Grushenka. Instead, Dmitry claims the 3,000 ruble figure that came up between them was actually tied to a large piece of land that Dmitry says his father had secretly, taken from him previously.
Land? How does that involve the officer and 3,000 rubles?
Dmitry says he planned to transfer the rights or the papers for this land to the Polish officer. The officer could then sell the land himself, and it was worth about 3,000 rubles.
So it wasn't cash he was offering, but like
Okay.
the potential value of land rights he planned to transfer? That sounds almost as convoluted as the cleaning cloth pouch story.
It really does. And the interrogators react exactly how you'd expect after hearing the first strange story. They dismiss this land transfer explanation immediately. They laugh, call it childish nonsense, just like they did with the pouch story.
So they side with the officer's version, even though he's clearly biased.
It seems so, probably because Dmitry's own explanations are just so incredibly hard to believe, so out there. The officer's story, even if motivated by hate, fits a more recognizable pattern of human behavior.
It seems like a pattern is emerging. Any complex, unusual explanation from Dmitry gets laughed off. But even biased witness testimony, if it offers a more conventional, even if unflattering, motive, that gets taken more seriously.
Absolutely. It really underscores how quickly you lose credibility when your story sounds outlandish. The authorities are likely looking for a narrative that fits their understanding of crime, of motives. Dmitry's unique explanations fall so far outside that box that they're immediately flagged as lies.
Were there any other witnesses? The outline mentioned a fourth person, a man named Maximov.
Ah, yes, Maximov. His testimony is almost like a moment of dark comedy in the middle of all this tension. But it still, in a way, adds to the overall feeling that Dmitry was connected to large, confusing sums of money.
What did Maximov claim? Don't tell me it was about the pouch.
No, nothing so sensible. He makes this astounding, almost unbelievable claim.
Yeah.
That he saw Dmitry with 20,000 rubles.
20,000 rubles. That's a fortune, way beyond anything else anyone's talking about. How did the interrogators react to that?
Predictably, intense laughter, utter disbelief. They openly mock him. They ask if he even knows what 20,000 rubles looks like, or if he's ever actually seen that much money in his life. It's clear they think his claim is just ridiculous.
Does he try to clarify? How could he possibly have seen that?
He tries to explain. He says, well, actually, he didn't see the cash. He saw the land that was supposedly worth that much. His wife apparently showed him some big field and told him its value was 20,000 rubles.
Saw the land, not the cash.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. The notes say the interrogators ridiculed that, too.
Yeah, they just laughed it off. Saw the land, not the cash. They dismiss him entirely, basically send him away. His testimony about 20,000 isn't taken seriously as, like, proof of that specific amount. But the fact that another person, even someone clearly unreliable like Maximov, is associating Dmitry with these huge, almost mythical sums of money, it subtly reinforces the general picture the other witnesses are painting. That Dmitry was dealing with, or at least boasting about, amounts far greater than the simple 1,500 rubles he claims was left.
Right. It adds to the overall sense of financial chaos, exaggeration, maybe untruthfulness surrounding him.
Right.
And that just further undermines his very specific, limited account of the 1,500 in the pouch.
Exactly. It clouds the waters even more.
Okay, so let's sum up the witness impact here. While their individual stories about why the money was there differ at, general spending, bribing a rival, you've got multiple witnesses, Trifon, Andrei, the Polish officer, even Maximov in his own weird way, who consistently testify that Dmitry was talking about or somehow associated with sums like 3,000 or even 6,000 rubles around the time all this went down.
And that consistency coming from multiple sources, even with their biases or maybe inaccurate details, it creates this powerful cumulative effect. It makes Dmitry's personal, specific story 1,500 left from 3,000, hidden in a rag pouch, seem increasingly incredible, increasingly like a desperate lie in the eyes of the authorities.
It's a classic case of circumstantial evidence just building and building, creating what looks like a solid case, even if each piece isn't perfect.
Precisely. It feels overwhelming.
Dmitri does make a kind of partial admission about the money talk, doesn't he? Near the end of this part.
He does, yeah. He sort of concedes that, okay, yes, he did talk publicly about having 3,000 rubles on previous occasions,
Yeah.
including the night before.
But he tries to explain it away.
Yeah, he claims he was just exaggerating. He says it's just a man's habit to boast, inflate how much money you have.
Mhm.
He insists he didn't actually possess that amount when he's claiming he did.
He tries to frame it as just like guy talk, masculine bluster, not a literal statement of fact.
That's the angle. But by this point, after that parade of witnesses all saying similar things about the numbers, that explanation feels really weak. Too little, too late.
Yeah, you feel like the damage is done.
Exactly. And based on this cumulative testimony about the larger sums, combined with just how unbelievable his hidden money story sounded, the judges and lawyers, they reach a clear conclusion, at least for this stage.
What did they decide?
They basically declare that, look, based on everything we've heard, this is clearly about more than just the 1,500 rubles Dmitri claims were left in that pouch. They find his whole hidden money story completely unconvincing.
So the witness accounts win out.
Pretty much. They conclude that the evidence gathered so far, especially those consistent witness accounts about him talking about 3,000 or even 6,000 rubles, is enough to hold him.
Which leads to the official decision, the big one.
Yes. The judge declares that the evidence as it stands right now is all against Dmitri. And as a result, he must be taken as a prisoner to await his formal trial.
Wow. That's it. The definitive moment. The stark change in his status. Moments before, he was a free man, under intense questioning, sure, but free. Now, legally, he's detained, facing trial for patricide. His freedom is just gone.
It is a tremendous fall, as the narrator notes later, a seismic shift.
Right?
And the narrative follows him closely in these crucial moments right after that declaration, capturing that transition from free man to prisoner.
The transcript describes Dmitri realizing he has maybe only a minute or two left before he's fully taken into custody, before his new reality really sinks in.
And in that tiny window, that sliver of time, he makes one final, very poignant request to the judges.
He asks to see Grushenka.
Yes, to be allowed one last moment with her, just a hug for the last time.
Do they let him?
They do. They grant the request. And the scene of their brief embrace is incredibly moving. Dmitri says to her, "Grushenka, I've always loved you."
And she responds, sticking by him.
Completely. She reaffirms her unwavering commitment, basically echoing what she told the judges earlier. Dmitri, I am with you. I will go to Siberia with you.
That's incredible loyalty. Right there in front of everyone, knowing he's now officially a prisoner accused of murder.
It's a moment of just pure, deep emotional connection and loyalty in the face of absolute despair. Then, Dmitri is let out. The scene shifts to outside the guest house. There's a horse-drawn carriage waiting to take him away, and a crowd has gathered.
Who's in the crowd? Just random onlookers?
No, there's many of the same people who were celebrating with Dmitri the night before. The gypsies, the local men and women. They were his party guests. Now they're silent onlookers watching his arrest.
Oh, wow. That's a powerful visual contrast. The wild revelry of the party, now this cold public spectacle of his downfall the morning after.
Exactly. And as Dmitri makes his way to the carriage, he has a few key, very revealing encounters with people in that crowd.
Okay, who's the first?
The first is with a man named Smitov. He's a local junior officer.
Did Dmitri know him?
Yeah, apparently quite well. The notes say they would often drink together in taverns, and Dmitri would frequently buy him drinks. So there was this kind of casual, maybe even rough camaraderie between them, a drinking buddy, essentially.
Okay, so how does this former drinking buddy treat Dmitri now that he's a prisoner?
The treatment is shockingly harsh, just brutal. The transcript describes Smitov speaking to Dmitri in a rude voice, barking orders at him like, "Go sit in it," talking about the carriage.
Seriously?
Yeah, and it gets worse. As Dmitri sits down, Smitov actually pushes him, saying, "Go over there," like shove him further into the carriage.
That is incredibly cruel
Yeah.
and disrespectful, especially from someone he considered, an acquaintance, someone he'd shared drinks with.
It is.
Yeah.
And it clearly shocks Dmitri. This interaction is just a stark, awful example of how quickly status changes everything, how it redefines relationships and can just strip away basic human decency.
Yeah.
The moment Dmitri becomes the accused, the prisoner, this guy, Smetov, feels empowered to treat him with contempt and cruelty. It's a chilling look at how people can turn on you when you fall.
A really bitter welcome to his new reality as a prisoner. Yet despite this awful treatment and everything else that's happened, Dmitri makes a surprising gesture to the crowd before he gets fully into the carriage, doesn't he?
He does. In a moment, the source actually describes as showing Dimitri's magnanimity or his sort of innate generosity or nobility. He waves to the crowd gathered there.
And what does he say to them?
He actually offers an apology. He says, "If I have caused any of you any trouble, then I am sorry."
Wow. He's facing imprisonment for murder, public humiliation, being treated like dirt by former friends, and his concern is whether he caused them any trouble.
It's a remarkable moment.
Yeah.
It really adds another layer to his incredibly complex character. It shows his capacity for humility, for taking some kind of responsibility for the chaos he might have caused, even in this moment of absolute personal catastrophe.
Yeah, it stops you from seeing him as purely selfish or just a villain. It highlights this contradictory, maybe even noble aspect of his personality, right there in his lowest moment.
Exactly. But that magnanimity, that gesture,
Hmm.
it isn't universally appreciated. He specifically waves to Tryphon, the guest house owner, the one who just testified against him so angrily.
Right, the guy who welcomed him with open arms and then turned on him so sharply. How does Tryphon react this time?
Tryphon's reaction here is maybe the coldest, most cutting rejection of all. The transcript describes this striking act. Tryphon deliberately turns his back on Dmitri, refuses to even look at him. His posture is described as radiating arrogance.
Just turns his back. Wow, does Dmitri try again?
It seems so. Dmitri waves again,
Wow.
maybe hoping Tryphon just hadn't seen him, or maybe just unable to believe the cold shoulder he just got.
And Tryphon's final reaction.
Even more emphatic, he turns back, looks right at Dmitri, but in a rude way, the notes say. His eyes are filled with arrogance, offers absolutely no sign of recognition, no greeting, nothing, just cold disdain.
That's such a powerful, painful image. Complete abandonment. Contempt, even.
It really is. It just hammers home that theme of changing loyalties, the bitterness of being rejected by someone who is happy to take your money just hours before. Tryphon's arrogance seems to come from, aligning himself with the perceived winners, the authorities, and completely distancing himself from the now fallen Dmitri. It's ugly.
In the midst of all this cruelty and rejection, Smitov pushing him, Tryphon turning his back, is there anyone else in that crowd who shows some genuine human feeling for Dmitri? Besides Grushenka, of course.
Yes. Thankfully, there is one other person, someone who offers a moment of solace, a young man named Kalganov.
Kalganov. Who is he?
He's described as a 20-year-old friend, or maybe just a well-wisher, from Dmitri's own city. He was also at the party the night before.
Okay, a younger guy, a friend. What does he do?
As Dmitri is being led away, Kalganov actually steps forward from the crowd. He takes Dmitri's hands and offers words of comfort, of solidarity. He says, don't worry, and then adds, we are with you, Dmitri.
Wow. A single voice of genuine support. A hand offered in friendship. Right there in that crowd of indifferent watchers, cruel former buddies, and bitter turncoats.
It really stands out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the source notes that Dmitri manages a slight smile in response. Just a flicker. In that moment, he finds just a tiny bit of solace in this one genuine expression of support, apart from Grushenka.
Right.
It really underscores the immense value of even one person's loyalty when you feel utterly isolated.
And then the carriage drives away. With Dmitri inside, officially a prisoner, his freedom is over. This whole dramatic scene is done.
It is. But the narrative lingers for just a moment on Kalganov. After the carriage is gone, Kalganov goes back to his room, covers his face with his hands, and just starts crying like a child.
A grown man weeping.
Yes. It emphasizes the depth of his distress, the almost innocent, unfiltered nature of his reaction to what he's just witnessed. And he vocalizes the question that's probably hanging in the air for the reader, too. Not right what happened to Dmitri. He questions the very foundation of what he saw. What kind of world is this? What kind of justice?
His tears, his question, they really highlight the emotional toll of seeing a friend fall like that, and the apparent triumph of what feels like injustice, at least from his outside perspective.
And this final detail underscores a key point from the notes we have. Kalganov and Grushenka are specifically singled out as the only two people who show genuine sorrow for Dmitri's fate in this specific moment. The only ones shedding tears. It really emphasizes how widespread the lack of empathy, or even the outright hostility, is towards Dmitri now. Makes their loyalty stand out even more powerfully.
This entire sequence, starting with Dmitri's frankly bizarre testimony, going through that parade of damaging witnesses, Grushenka's incredible declaration, and ending with these brutal farewells, It feels like a genuine earthquake in the novel.
It absolutely does. The narrator explicitly describes it as a tremendous fall for Dmitri. The feeling is that the soul of the story, the very core of it, has been hit by a strong current, and it's fundamentally altering its course.
Why is Dimitri's fate so crucial to the narrative's soul, do you think?
Well, Dimitri's arguably the most dynamic character, the most viscerally alive presence in the story up to this point. The source calls him the most powerful character, the life of the story. His personality, so volatile, so passionate, so contradictory, has really driven much of the plot's energy and conflict.
Yeah, he's impossible to ignore.
Exactly. And he's been ambiguous, right? Swinging between looking like the villain and maybe being a kind of flawed hero. His true nature and what actually happened, that's the central mystery.
So taking this central, energetic, incredibly ambiguous figure and literally locking him away, that's not just moving a piece on the chessboard, it's like fundamentally changing the game itself.
Precisely.
Yeah.
His imprisonment is this dramatic upheaval. It forces the narrative in entirely new directions. It makes us explore the consequences of his absence on everyone else. How do they react? How do their own lives change without his chaotic energy stirring things up?
Right.
And it also forces the story to delve deeper into the legal system, the whole concept of justice, the broader societal implications, all filtered now through the lens of his upcoming trial.
And the fact that the evidence against him, based on what we just went through, is so tangled up, unreliable testimony, personal bias, his own unbelievable counter-explanations, it means his guilt or innocence remains deeply ambiguous for us, the readers, even as he's led away as a prisoner.
Absolutely. That ambiguity, combined with his central role, is what fuels so much of the remaining drama and suspense.
His presence was like a storm, and now his removal transforms the whole climate of the novel.
That's a great way to put it. The story now has to navigate the world he left behind
Yeah.
and the new reality of his confinement. It forces different characters, different aspects of the human condition to come to the forefront.
It's a powerful reminder, really, of how the fate of one central character can send these huge ripples throughout an entire narrative world, alters the course for everyone involved, shifts the focus of the story itself. It's just a masterclass in creating narrative turning points.
And deeply effective one that raises such profound questions for us.
This deep dive has really taken us through a difficult but absolutely essential sequence. Dimitri's baffling defense, the overwhelming and often questionable witness testimonies, Grushenka's surprising, powerful loyalty, and that raw, emotional scene of his arrest and those bitter farewells.
Yeah, it's a moment that just strips bare the dynamics of accusation, judgment, and human connection when everything is on the line.
And it leaves us with some really significant questions to think about, doesn't it? I mean, think about those testimonies again. You had Maximov's just dismissed as absurd.
Right?
The Polish officers, clearly poisoned by his personal hatred for Dmitri.
Mm-hmm.
Trifon and Andrei's accounts, which seemed to shift depending on whether Dmitri was a paying customer or an accused criminal.
Yeah, very convenient shifts.
And then Grushenka's testimony, driven entirely by her deep personal belief and love for him.
Each witness offers up a version of truth, but it's all filtered through their own biases, their self-interest, or their emotional connection. How much does that personal filter influence what we, or the judges in the story, perceive as factual evidence?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in these high-stakes situations, like a criminal investigation or even just judging someone's character.
Yeah, what does this scene, with all its conflicting, biased, and sometimes just plain bizarre accounts, ultimately tell us about the nature of truth itself? Can there even be one single objective truth when every single testimony is colored by the perspective of the person getting it?
And how does that challenge our ability to judge? Not just fictional characters like Dmitri, but people in our own lives, the stories we hear every day.
It's a question that definitely resonates far beyond the pages of this novel.
It certainly does. A lot to chew on there.
A powerful thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.